All right, camera rolling.
Imagine starting your senior year of high school with everything in your life going normally, then having this final chapter of your high school career all seemingly ripped away in a moment. This is Nathalie Quezada. In the summer of 2018, she was forced to go to the Dominican Republic to get a permanent resident interview for an easier path to citizenship. This meant leaving her home, her friends, and even her country behind.
I felt awful because she's such a great person and I love her to death, and she's so caring and kind, and she's involved, and she's always been a great friend to me, and we've hung out and we've talked, and so hearing that she had to go through this hurt because she shouldn't have to. She's been here since she was really young, and she has only known this place, but's forced to go back to this country that she barely knows.
When I found out Nathalie had to leave, it was really weird because I didn't really understand the whole process or what was happening, and I remember I was always trying to ask people do you guys get it? So it got to the point where I just went to Nathalie and was like, yo, what's exactly happening? And it was definitely weird. It was because we're such the whole IB family, and we're all so together and we see each other so much. It was weird to have that missing piece, and obviously she's a great friend of mine, and it was weird to not have her there, and I'm just glad she's back.
When Nathalie had to leave, it was really, really sad for me because, she's the NHS president, and, she's just known for being so strong and being such a leader, and, I looked up to her because she just did so well in class, and she was just a good person and always looking out for others, and, when she had to go, I was like, oh my goodness, my person who I look up to isn't going to be here. And I got really upset, and there was a night where I just sat down and I just cried for a good hour because I was just we don't know what's going to happen. So it was really scary.
My feelings when I heard that Nathalie had to leave evolved over a period of an hour when I first started hearing her story. At first I didn't understand it, and I was confused. And as she began to explain the legal juggling that she was having to go through, I slowly, horrifically began to understand what it meant for her to be separated from her parents. It was a difficult hour for me to go through that, and it was really extremely difficult for her.
Nathalie has always been very informed about politics affecting the country and herself, so we asked her to elaborate on what occurred to her.
Okay, so as many people already know, in the IB class that I'm in right now, I was undocumented for very, very, very many years. Since I was born in the Dominican Republic, and about 2 months in from living in the Dominican Republic, my father, who is a permanent resident, decided to take my mom and I over to the United States. He took us over on June 6, 2001, and I was barely 3 months old. I don't remember any of it because, obviously I was a baby, but ever since then we lived in New York, and my mother tried to finalize my paperwork and tried to make me legal, as some may say, but after the September 11 attacks, it was very difficult to get any of your paperwork done. From there, the only person who was legal in my family was my dad and my brother. My brother was born here in the U.S., and so we moved to Florida, and I did not know that I was undocumented for very, very many years. And when in the 8th grade, I told my mom that I wanted to get my permit to drive, because I learned how to drive on a golf cart, and my dad taught me, here and there in the community, but my mom said you couldn't do that. And I didn't understand why until she sat down and told me, listen, you can't do that because you don't have papers. I didn't know what that meant at the time, and so many things happened after 8th grade, because in 2012 Obama passed the DACA law, and I didn't really care much for it, but little for me to know after, when I was in my freshman year, I was covered under DACA, but I didn't know, and I didn't apply for DACA until after my father was naturalized, through a lawyer, in which after my mom gave up so what happened was my mom gave up to finish our cases. She went to all these lawyers and nobody would take our case, and so it got to the point until when my mom confessed to one of her personal friends that she was undocumented, and that friend told my mom, hey, I have a friend who's a lawyer. And from there on, that lawyer became my lawyer. And I was covered under DACA. I got a work permit. I was a temporary resident. But my papers expired in October 26, 2018, which is in about a month. And under the current administration, there was threat that DACA would be repealed, and that when I turn 18, it would be much more difficult for me to take my permanent residence and to be interviewed for it, because then I would have been illegal, as many would say, because under the Obama era, there was a law passed saying that if you came into the United States under the age of 18 and you're still under the age of 18 with a parent, it was not your fault that you entered the United States, and that you would be granted an easier path. And so because of that, my lawyer took up the decision to have me take my permanent residence interview, and that meant that I would have to leave the country on a date that the government would give to me. And I was hoping that my date would be in June so that I could be back in class on August 13th, but that didn't happen.
Prior to leaving, Nathalie worked with her teachers and friends to figure out a way to provide her with the work that she needed for IB. The most active teacher in this process was her theory of knowledge teacher, Miss Weber.
We stayed in touch through the summer. We initially, after I figured out what was going on with her legal status, we made arrangements with the school and our IB program here to make sure that she was going to still be able to stay in contact with teachers. So during the summer, she and I emailed back and forth, and she would tell me, whether she was getting ready to leave or how soon she thought she was going to leave. Part of the process that was frustrating was that she didn't always know that either. It wasn't a hard and fast set date. So we made arrangements to stay in touch by email, and then once school started, we had a team of students that operated for her, that recorded the class and then stayed in touch with her and made sure that she had the information that she needed for each class. She was able to follow through on that on her own because she's an IB student and rather mature, and so there wasn't an issue with that.
Along with the long-distance workload, Nathalie also struggled with the multitude of issues in the Dominican Republic.
There was so many fears because if anything went wrong, I would have to stay in the DR, and I don't know for how long. And if I turned 18, then that would have been the biggest issue. I would not have been able to come back to the US. And there was just so many fears, including that medical exam, which was so unnecessary. My mom had to do it last year, and she told me, listen, don't be afraid, but they're going to ask you to strip naked in a room in front of a doctor for them to probe around you and things like that. And that was the thing that scared me the most before the interview. But turns out when I was over there, I had a doctor who actually knew what to do and didn't do any of that because I was under 18. I was in a country that I don't even recognize. I don't know the people. I know the language, but that's about it. I don't even know the culture. And so from there, we traveled from Santo Domingo to Santiago to my family, where they live out in the campo, camps basically. And it was just difficult, I would say. There was some days there wasn't electricity, some days there wasn't water. And not to mention there was lack of transportation. I had family issues over there. When it came time to do my interview process, I was lucky enough to get, as they say, a gringa, because basically what happened was when she went to interview me, she was speaking Spanish, and I said, wait, I speak English, and she was very surprised, and she asked, have you ever left the US? And I said, no, this is my first time leaving the US, and automatically she granted my she granted my approval for my visa, which meant that as soon as I left the Dominican Republic and as soon as I stepped onto American soil, I would have become a permanent resident, which would then make me automatically a citizen because of my father, who is naturalized as a citizen, and under a George W. Bush law, he dictated that anyone who is under 18 who is a permanent resident and their parent is a citizen through naturalization would become a citizen as well, so that they don't have to take the test. The only thing left that I have to do is pay some fees, only to say that I am a citizen now, and and a name change because they changed my name, and a new passport and a new license. But that was it. I am now a citizen, but I don't feel any different.
When Nathalie came back to the US, it was a very emotional time for the IB cohort.
Oh my God. I love you so much. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you're here. Oh my gosh. Is everything good? Everything's good. Oh my God. I was thrilled. The students surprised me in the hallway with Nathalie's return. I didn't know exactly which day she was going to come back, and I was thrilled. We hugged and cried for a long time.
I felt happy. I went over, because, like, I, like, talked to her, like, briefly before she left. Like, I texted her, and then I saw her get out of her car, like, 2 days ago. And, like, I went over and I hugged her, and then, like, I felt so happy because, like, she's back and, like, we're friends and I love her. So happy.
Oh my God, I was so excited. I was in the office at the right time, right when she was coming back for the first time, and it was just so nice. It was assuring to know she was, like, finally, like, okay. And it was just, we hugged, and I cried, and I wasn't expecting to cry, and I think it showed me, having her back made me realize how much I really did miss her and love having her as a friend.
Oh, I just started, well, when I first saw that she came back to Florida was through Snapchat, but I just started crying. I was just, like, sitting in the car crying my eyes out, and my family was like, are you okay? I was just like, Natalie's home. And then I was getting off of school, and I saw her drive up in her car, and I just, like, I dropped everything. I just ran up to her, and I hugged her, and I was, like, she was in her car. There were other cars behind her, but I just didn't care. I was just so happy that she was home and that she was safe, and that, like, now if she has anything else to do and anything that's worrying her, we can be there for her.
When I first came back to school, the first thing that I did was go to the office and go get my parking permit so that I could park the next day. Turns out I wasn't going to go to school the next day because I had to go to court. But the first thing that happened when I stepped foot onto the school campus was that I was met by some security guard. He asked for my stuff. I was like, I'm a student. I went up and I saw that the kids were starting to leave, and that meant that anyone who had senior privilege was able to leave. And so the first person that I saw coming back was Alex. She came, she ran to my car, she gave me a hug, and I just sat there, and then I went to the office. And when I went, pressed the button to open the door, nobody would open the door until the door opened, and Julia was the first person to be there, recording me. And Julia came in for a hug, Hayden came in for a hug, and then I went up, asked for my parking permit, and Julia asked me, who's the first person you want to see? Who's the first teacher you want to see? And I said, let's go see Miss Weber. Because Miss Weber fought, tooth and nail, I think is the expression, in which she said that she was going to call anyone for favors. She was going to, call the president and stuff. But the first person I saw was Miss Weber. And I surprised her. And it was just so much emotion coming over because, at first, I'm not going to say that Miss Weber was my favorite teacher at first, but I've come to be more connected with Miss Weber through that lens of my story. And she became more knowledgeable about the issue, and I'm glad that I was able to put some change in her perspective of the immigration story and the issue going around in the U.S. right now.
Congress has never passed a law requiring birthright citizenship for illegal aliens, and the Constitution does not, I say that to the media, does not require it. Read it. Because illegal aliens are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
Well, at first, I didn't know exactly why, but when I found out, that definitely was a big deal, because especially since, right now, and, the political climate, I guess, that we're in, there's a lot of talks about that kind of these kind of things like immigration and deportations and all that stuff. And not, she did not get deported, but the fact that she had to go back to a country that she's only has been to when she was born is really not the way it should have to work. She shouldn't have to leave and miss school. America as a country has decided that school education is important, and yet they're taking her away, so she has to go get something done, which she could easily do here. But it's just not the way it works. The system is really messed up, and so hopefully something that our generation can improve upon.
Something that I want to say is that a paper and a nationality does not dictate who you are. I haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is my status of nationality. Now I'm a Dominican and a U.S. citizen, but it doesn't matter where you come from, but it matters what you grow around and who you are to the day because of the people you've met or because of the place that you live in. It's not to say that forget your background, you've moved to the U.S., but for those who say that they're immigrants, it takes a lot of strength to come out from the closet and out from the dark and telling people that you don't have your papers, that you can't work, that you can't drive, that the only thing you can do is get an education, which is something that is very difficult in another country like that. And for people to go on the streets and tell you, you know, things that you shouldn't be exposed to when you're a 14, 13, 15-year-old walking down the street, that you should go back to your homeland, that you should go back to Mexico because of certain things. I think that through this whole experience, it's just empowering because it's something that gave me the goal of going into government when I'm older, to be able to make a change in my community, because I don't want people to be afraid of where they come from or be afraid that they don't have papers and that they shouldn't go out and get a lawyer, because it's just something that it's nonsense. It's scary, it's nonsense, and it's sending a message that your nationality is more important than being able to work, to go to school, to get educated, to have food, and that if you are not an American or if you don't belong here, then you shouldn't belong here. And I don't think that that's the message that should be sent to kids, especially like kids who are under 18 and people who have lived here their whole life like I did.
And the Democrats want to continue giving automatic birthright citizenship to every child born to an illegal alien.